Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, Sean Bussey, Paul Downs, and Jay Goltz talk about the tendency of many businesses to obsess about their logo, their website, and the need to drive more leads, to which Sean suggests concentrating first on customer experience. And Jay agrees. It's better business, he says, to make your customers happier than to keep trying to find new customers. But Paul has his doubts. You can have your internal house in order, as I do, he says, and you can have a great website, as I do, but it's not driving new business to us at the moment. Plus, Sean, Paul, and Jay react to recently publicized strategies to address the labor shortage, such as giving out raises more than once a year and encouraging new employees to take a vacation before they start work. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. Same thing with our daily newsletter, the 21 Hats Morning Report, which highlights the most important news of the day for business owners, and which you can subscribe to at 21hats.com. We can also find transcripts of our podcast episodes and lots of other articles and interviews. Joining me this week on the podcast are regulars Sean Bussey, CEO of Kinesis, which is based in Portland, Oregon, and works with small businesses on marketing, culture, and strategy. Paul Downs, who is CEO of Paul Downs Cabinet Makers, which is based outside of Philadelphia, where it makes custom conference tables. And Jay Goltz, whose companies in Chicago include a picture frame business, Artist Frame Service, and a home furnishing store, Jason Home. The episode is titled, "We Tried That Brand Thing. It Didn't Work." Welcome, Sean, Paul, and Jay. For a few reasons that I think we'll get to quickly, I'd like to talk about branding today. And I want to start with you, Sean. I know you've been thinking about what branding means for small businesses and what that suggests about how you position your own business, Kinesis. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What are you thinking?
Yeah, and this was sort of sparked a little bit by an earlier conversation we had on the first show I was on with Jay. And I was trying to describe how we work across multiple areas of the business and not just marketing, which has kind of been our history in terms of brand awareness. So we've really been kind of searching for a term to express what does it mean when you align your culture and your people and your customer experience, your market presentation. It's a tough idea that maybe doesn't have just one word. But somebody in our group is really pushing for the idea of owning the idea of brand as an entry point to what we do. When we wrote Marketing from the Inside Out, there's a framework in there that kind of starts at the core, which is your mission, your vision, and your values, and then works outwards to your customer experience. And, in between is employee engagement, your way of working. And whenever I would talk about that idea to clients or potential clients, I would really end that and say, that's not actually really marketing that I'm talking about. Really, what I'm talking about is brand. And I think most people get it, but I'm not sure because there's still a lot of folks who hear the word brand and they think logo or they think website or they think visual design. So we've been thinking about it holistically internally, and that's how we approach our work. But I'm really curious about the larger market and if it's ready for that kind of idea and if it's the right way to talk about it.
Paul, in a conversation you and I had just a couple of weeks ago, you said that you think your company doesn't have a brand. How do you react to what Sean just said?
I think it's entirely misguided. It sounds to me like he's describing culture. And to the extent that culture is waved as a flag at prospective customers, that could be a brand. But to me, a brand is, does somebody think of you when they think of the thing you do? That's it. And so we have a great culture. And we currently, I don't think that anybody who was like, where do I get a custom conference table? Paul Downs. I just don't think that anybody does that. And to the extent that they don't, I don't have a brand. Now, we've found a different way to connect with clients, which is through Google. But Google doesn't require you to have a brand in order to. It doesn't require that we have anything other than the ability to be a good answer to the question, who makes conference tables?
Jay, what do you think?
I have a completely opposite answer, though it's close. I'm going to argue that you have a tremendous, Paul, you have a tremendous brand. You're talking about brand awareness, which is very different. When you go to your website is first class. I Googled this morning, knowing what we were going to talk about, I Googled high quality custom conference table. Boom, you came up first. So you've got a great brand, a great story. I love how you've got everybody's picture on there. It's a lovey-dovey, beautiful website. You got the American flag made. I think you have a tremendous brand, but yes, clearly you don't have a high brand awareness, which is not brand. That's called marketing. So I think brand is what do people think of when they think of your company, period, end of the story. And that means everything. What does your truck look like? What does your invoices look like? What do your business cards look like? What do people look at when they look at your website? It's how you present yourself out there. And I had a funny experience. I was doing a speech probably 15 years ago to the Appliance Dealer Association. And I had these people in the room and I started talking about brand, and these two old guys in the front row, they were like the two old guys in the Muppets, like whispering to each other, whispering so loud because they're old guys. He goes, "We tried that brand thing. It didn't work." So I said, I heard that. I said, you have a brand either way. The question is it the brand you want? But you all have a brand. Some people's brand are, I run a dumpy looking store. That's your brand. Everybody has a brand. They do. The question is it a good brand?
I don't know. I mean, that just sounds more to me like culture.
No, culture is a whole different thing.
The reason we have a good website is because I enforce a culture of craftsmanship. And I want everything that we do to be well crafted. But I know a lot of people who do very similar business who just don't have that culture. And so it's just different.
What drives it or not is a different story. You're saying culture might drive your brand, but the brand is the brand.
Okay, well, let me throw this out. It sounds like you guys think of culture as being part of the brand.
Yeah, sure.
And I think of brand as being part of the culture. In other words, there's a fundamental way of being a Paul Downs cabinet maker that if everything is done the way I want it to, the brand ends up being the thing you see. But your definition doesn't really address, like, okay, what's the point of a brand without brand awareness?
Let me explain that. So you could have a brand, you could look great from the outside, except you could be a complete jackass. But if no one knows that you're a complete jackass, your brand is still your brand. Oh, look, there's a nice company. That doesn't mean you are a nice company, but you look like a nice company. So my argument is your brand is the perception of what people see. Now, to your next question of what good is brand without brand? Yeah, sure. You need to market your brand and get it out there. No question about it. But you are doing that. I Googled just those few phrases and you came right up number one.
That's great.
That's good.
I'll send a thank you note to Google because they did that.
No, they didn't do that. You did that.
I want to address actually Paul's comment because I disagree with him pretty vociferously. So my belief is that every company has a brand, whether they like it or not, right? It's the perception of the organization from quote unquote the outside. Now, where I extend that idea is I don't just think of customers. I actually think of the employees. So the employees have a perception of the company. They have an experience with the brand. That experience is something you're trying to shape, Paul, right? You're trying to focus on craftsmanship, attention to detail. And those employees talk about your company when you're not around in a certain way. Now, ideally, they talk about your company in the way you want them to, and that your customers talk about that company in the same way. And I think that's the opportunity for small businesses is to align those internal forces and that external awareness. I agree with Jay 1,000%. What you're talking about is brand awareness. It's not brand. Brand awareness is people being aware of what's going on out there and that you're the go-to source for conference tables, for example. That's customer brand awareness. You might also have very low employee brand awareness. You may not be somebody that people think about going to work for because you haven't done a good job of articulating what your culture is and what it's about. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
I got to tell you, though, someone goes to his website, it reeks of just nice, happy company. So if someone does nothing more than just go to his website, I think he's already ahead of the game with that. And every day, just about, I see a company that's just doing a terrible job with their brand management. Yesterday, just like you get, I'm sure, I get 10 emails a day about people trying to pitch me on services. So this one guy calls me, follows up on his email, calls me 2 or 3 times, and does a good job. So I did something I almost never do. I actually called him. He's selling freight management services. I called him. I said, I just have to give you credit. You did a really good job of following up. Most people never follow up. He didn't put a bunch of baloney in there. It was right to the point. And as I'm talking to him, though, I pull up his website and I hit About Us. And there's nothing in there. It's about, we started in whatever year. I go, who owns your company? He couldn't even tell me. I go, you know what? I'm not doing business with a company. I don't know who's behind it. And that's my new philosophy as of yesterday. Any company that's pitching me, if I go to their website and they hide, I'm not doing business with them.
See, I think you put your finger on the thing I'm trying to address, which is that most businesses do not appreciate that interconnectivity between the culture and the internal brand and the external experience. So right there is a perfect example of that, right? Like you're interfacing with him created a perception of the company that then got kind of screwed up by how they managed it in the public presentation.
Somebody made a decision. That wasn't an accident. They made a decision. Oh, no, I don't want my name on there.
Right.
Oh, you want me to give you all of my inside information about my shipping prices and where I'm shipping, and you won't even tell me your name? So I can tell you, somebody called me last year, really good pitch. He works for one of the biggest brokerage firms in the country. You'd know it in a second, a private wealth group, and he's pitching me on why I should have my portfolio there. And he did a really, really good job. So surprisingly. So I Googled the name of his company. I see who the 3 principals are. The first thing that came up, the guy's name, he was being sued for drugging and raping a woman and leaving her for dead. In the New York Times, and better yet, hit this button, a video. It's a video of him dragging the woman into the elevator at a hotel, a video of it. And I'm thinking, wow, there's some branding. So he called me back. I said, got to tell you, I did a little research on your company. Oh my God, that's a nightmare. That lady's crazy. And he goes into his whole thing. And I thought, not cool. Were you there? Do you know what happened? I have a video in front of me watching him drag this woman into he should have said, you know what? That was a really bad situation. I wasn't there. I can only tell you the case was dismissed. If you'd like, I'd be happy to have you talk to one of the other. And all I'm thinking is these guys are managing millions, like hundreds of millions of dollars for people. And that guy's picture is still on their website. So I have an idea for you. I think you should do something called a brand audit. That you go into a company and you look at, there aren't 500. I'm sitting here as we're talking. I made a list. I think there's probably 30 things you could look at. Everything from their invoices to business cards to website to the truck to their cars to the way they dress to their hours to the way their office looks to where their office is. And you could just do a brand audit and say, okay.
Who are you saying should do this, Jay? Who should do an audit?
Not me. It's not you, Lauren. I think that leaves just Sean.
Is there a problem? What's the problem?
No, I think it's a good idea. Actually, can I jump in and say, we're talking about brand as if it's one thing, but actually brand for a small business and brand for American Airlines, 2 completely different things. Jay, when you pick up a Coke and drink it, do you give a damn whether the CEO paid his taxes last year or not? No. There's different scales to it.
Well, I got to tell you, though, maybe I don't care if he paid his taxes, but I might care if I knew he was giving a lot of money to a cause that I'm vehemently against. That would make a difference.
Okay. What's in your fridge?
I don't drink Coke because I think it's poison. I think it's poison. I don't drink Coke.
Tell me what the CEO is up to on every single product that's in your fridge.
I'm not looking into it.
I'm perfectly happy to say that when we talk about small business brand, which is I think where Sean started, yeah, that's a different conversation, and that some of my comments on the value of brand are more thinking, okay, we're incorporating this concept, which is do people know who you are? And the part that we haven't talked about yet is do people care about all that back office stuff if the product itself is satisfactory?
I have the answer to that. And the answer is that people can dismiss every single thing I say and say, oh, no one cares what your card looks like. No. And the answer is, okay, you're probably 90% right, but 10% of the people do, in fact, pay attention whether your cards look a certain way. Some people do care if the partner in charge of their finances is a rapist. Some people care, some people don't care. But there's probably, I'm guessing now, 30 things you could put on this audit sheet to decide whether the impression they're giving to the outside world matches what they think they are.
Let me cut in here a second. Before we get too far away from the disagreement between Sean and Paul about Paul's branding or lack thereof, is this just semantics? Does it matter what you label it? I mean, we all agree that Paul has a great brand. Well, we don't all agree. We all agree that Paul needs more brand awareness, and he is thinking about ways to achieve that. Does it matter what we call it? Is this just semantics, or is there something deeper here?
I think, man, we're just bringing up so many rich topics here we could talk about. But part of the reason I brought this to the table is I was curious what would happen. Because when I am out in the marketplace and I say, Kinesis provides marketing services, for example, immediately people frame in their mind what they think that is. And if I then say, part of our services is we help people reinvent their hiring process and rewrite their job descriptions, they'll be like, wait a minute, that's not marketing. And so then there's like confusion, or in the best of case, it's like curiosity. That's great. So I think that, yes, it's semantics, and there's no agreement, in terms of what this word means. I mean, just listen to the three of us. We've all got various versions of this truth. But I do think it's an important thing. At least that's been my experience, is that when I see small businesses get it right, they really dominate. Because it's an alignment. I mean, back to Jay's point, several episodes ago, right? It's an alignment opportunity. It's saying internally, this is what we believe, do, and say. Externally, this is what we present, do, and say. And I think the problem for small businesses is when they don't recognize that they have a brand, a public-facing brand, and also an internal way of living in the world. That misalignment is what pisses customers off the most. Recently, as an example, I use a big brand, Sonos, which is a speaker company. I love the product. It's great. It's wonderful. I have a bunch of them. I had one break, and I engaged with the company through their customer service. It was a terrible experience. That was the first time I really had a bad experience with that company. And I reached out to their, kind of next level support. And I was like, this is what happened. This is my experience. And they were amazing. They made it right. They went above and beyond, so it's like companies have a real opportunity to impact their customer experience as well as their customer loyalty and advocacy. And I think that word they want to use when they say that is brand. And I can't think of a better word, because if I say, I don't know what to say, that is a brand experience, it's a customer service experience, but it's everything right now. My perception of the company has really been salvaged. And now I'm an advocate again. And I think the more small businesses think like that, they think about, hey, if I don't hire great people internally, we're going to lose customers. And I think that's part of the brand. And I think most companies do that intuitively and without a deliberate thought. But I think that's actually an opportunity.
I think what you're doing is having operations alignment so that their brand matches their intentions. You're not putting lipstick on a pig here. You're not going there and saying, oh, we're going to get everyone to believe that you've got nice people working there. No, you're fixing their hiring process and management. You're fixing the operations. So I think what you're talking about is matching their operations with their intent, and then making sure that their brand matches both of those things. And you're right, a lot of companies aren't doing that.
Jay, let me ask you, do you feel your brand is where you'd like it to be? Do you think in Chicago people know there's a difference between your framing stores and other framing stores?
I work on it regularly. I make sure my website looks better. I make sure the front of the building looks better. My storefront looks better. My store inside looks better. I've got better people. Have I figured out how to make sure that I can communicate that in the best possible way? That it's difficult, because the fact is my frame business is 20 times the size of the average frame business. And as a result, I've got much better resources. I've got a much better inventory. It's difficult to advertise that without just sounding like you're bragging or something, like an ad line saying we're 20 times bigger than is not necessarily going to sell more picture framing, but there are some inherent advantages of the fact that we are much bigger. The other thing is we're much bigger because we do a better job. It's not any more complicated than that. It really isn't. It's not like I'm spending $8 million a year on advertising. We do a better job. My retention is way higher than most places.
But do your customers know that?
I think so. We try to communicate that.
I think they feel it. Here's the thing. I think they feel it.
Do you know why? They walk in, they see the same person that's worked here for 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. They feel cared for.
I've got 3 people in the showroom that have been here for 20 years. I don't have to say it. They see it. And then if there's ever a problem with anything, we always take care of it. Are there some people that are mad at us for some reason because they think the price was too high or because somebody was mad? And I feel bad about this. We delivered their artwork to their condo, left it in the we gave it to the concierge thing, and it was in a clear plastic bag. And he was mad that we didn't, that his neighbors could see the art. And like, it sounds silly, but I get it. I wish we didn't, I didn't think about it. We don't do that anymore. I mean, there's some people that are mad about something, but we take care of customers. It's not any more complicated than that. And I can tell you, because I know this number for sure, 93% of our customers are either repeat or their friends sent them in. I mean, so my business was not built by advertising. It was built by keeping customers happy.
Well, I think Jay's idea of a brand audit is actually very good. That's a great service, and it's probably not a ton of work, and it would be a great way to open a conversation with a client.
What we found is when we say to folks, hey, you can't read the label from inside the bottle, most everybody kind of like, yeah, I know, so. And that even goes for us. Like, we've hired people to evaluate us. And part of that process is like interviewing our customers, because customers will tell a third party things they won't tell you as an owner. And both good and bad. If you're really concerned about your brand, whether that's public perception or employee experience, which I think is more and more important, it's like, many of these businesses are, in fierce competition with what they do. I mean, Jay's a great example of this. Building frames and putting art in frames is something that a lot of people could do, but somehow he's figured out a way, to win out over the competition for many, many years. And I would argue a large part of that is the experience the customer has, which is a direct result of the employee engagement, which is a direct result of his care and compassion for his employees. I can just draw a straight line to that.
I can give you some simple math. And I show people, if I keep 95% of the customers really happy and someone else keeps 90% happy simply because they close early sometimes or the lighting's bad, whatever, lots of reasons, that over 40 years, it's going to be the difference between having a really big business and not a really big business. We're talking about being 5 or 10% better. That's all we're talking about. And over time, that's what separates the companies that grow and the companies that don't grow.
So let me jump in. Sean, if you think the things that I think are culture or brand, what in your mind is culture?
I mean, I think it's sort of like asking the question, like, what is sautéing vegetables? It's a form of cooking, right? So I'm thinking about cooking. I'm thinking about the whole act of preparing a meal, and a culture is a component of that. And I think like a really important component, but I really like to think about it through the lens of brand, because I want to see culture aligned with the external presentation. Like I want internal culture to match customer experience and expectation. And I think brand can be a way to unify those ideas, and the more we see, especially people struggling to hire employees, it's no longer like, I want to hire an employee to do a job. It's like, I want to hire an employee to be part of something. And those are your best candidates. Those are your best employees. And to do that, I think you have to present them with a larger narrative of purpose and meaning, whether that's, hey, be part of a group that cares for one another. It can be as simple as that. It can be, be a craftsman and the best person at your art. That could be part of your brand. And then that's something that like customers, I think, care about, Paul. So I see culture as a subset of brand that's probably as or more important than your public presentation for small businesses. And I think that's a little bit controversial, because I think the emphasis is almost always on, well, how do we look better? How do we have a better logo? How do we have a better website? And that's important, But I think the experience the customer has from a long-term perspective is how you build compounding returns. Because if you create a great customer experience and they come back to you and they refer business to you, like that is so much more valuable than paying a ton of money to go get new clients. At least that's been my experience.
The math would back that up. It's cheaper, it's better business to make your customers happier than to keep trying to buy new customers. And I actually believe I haven't, at least for myself, I'll just say for myself, I feel very comfortable that I can define corporate culture in 3 things. Simple. 1, how far will you go for a customer? We do whatever we need to do. 2, what do you expect from employees? I don't want to run a place that people are working 70 hours a week. I think they need to be here when they need to be here, but I do not push people that hard, and I don't want to run a place like that. That's just my personal thing. And 3, what are your expectations or standards for the way they treat each other? I will not have people working here being disrespectful to each other. And I have had some very painful firings that I've had to get rid of some people that were really valuable that just couldn't stop being jerks to other people. And after 3-4 conversations, and after saying, if this happens again, you're going to leave me no choice but to fire you. And I'm going to be sick about it, but I'm going to do it. I've had to do that several times because some people just can't stop from being jerks. So I think that's what corporate culture is, personally.
Paul, did you get an answer from Sean and Jay?
Oh, yeah. Didn't you hear any of that, Lauren?
Yeah.
I mean, the day we don't get an answer from Jay, oh my God.
That's my brand.
All right, now here's the most important question then, and be honest. Do you guys think 21 Hats has potential as a brand? Anybody?
I think it already has a brand. I don't think it's about potential. I think you have a brand of having honest conversations about things that you'd never hear, that I'd never hear anywhere else. I think that's the brand. Real life conversations from real life business owners.
You are in a particularly difficult situation because your space is dominated by other brands that are up and functioning, and you're competing for attention with people who've had a lot of practice in grabbing attention. So I think that's the part of the discussion that we haven't really touched on yet, which is what's the value of a brand? I mean, I agree with Sean that it's very important that you have an internal brand/culture that is not repellent to new possible job applicants, particularly in this environment. Let's just stipulate, yes, that's true. But in terms of being out there in the wide world, hoping that somebody who's looking for a good or service is going to connect with any particular business, their brand is functioning in a slightly different way. And you can have your internal house in order, as I do, and you can have a great website, as I do, but it's not what's driving new business to us. At the moment, we're still stuck on Google. And Lauren, you're in exactly the same situation. You've got a great product, and presumably the voices in your head are all in alignment because you don't have employees, but...
Did I tell you about the voices in my head?
If you don't remember, then that's a bad sign. But you know what I'm saying is that it's not just an internal set of decisions. It's about how it operates in the marketplace. And I think that's like an entirely different discussion. So I'll just throw that out there, and now Sean and Jay can have at it.
I think you keep mixing up brand with marketing. Everything you just described is marketing. It's taking your brand and getting it out there to get business. That's called marketing. And I in my mind, I think there's a very clear distinction. Your brand is what you are and how you come off and how you look to the public. And marketing is how you get that out there. And I think that you're right. 21 Hats, while I believe has a very strong brand, clearly it's difficult for Lauren to compete with American Express when they want to go out there and, pitch their whatever.
Okay, let's put it a different way. Unless you've succeeded in your marketing, you don't have a valuable brand. You just have a set of, a logo and some letterhead or whatever you got.
Okay, I won't argue with that one.
Looking at it from the actual what's happening in the marketplace and just saying, oh, it's a marketing problem. Okay, it's a marketing problem, but how do we solve the marketing problem, particularly for smaller businesses? What do you have to do so that you start to build that awareness? That's where I'm stuck, because my brand is not bringing me new business. New business is bringing me the opportunity to build the brand that I want.
Wait, how can you say your brand, your website does a lovely job of communicating your brand, and you just said you get lots of traffic from Google. How can you...
Because I got business when I had a crappy website. The way customers find us is really driven by Google, not necessarily by what I have on my website.
Again, that's marketing, not brand. You have a very solid brand. When they do find you, they find out, oh, this guy cares about what he does and does a nice job. That's your brand.
Can we circle back to Lauren for a minute here? I think Paul makes some great points as usual. You are in a bit of a crowded market. There's a lot of folks, giving business advice or giving insight into business. I think your brand position is unique in that you're looking for authenticity and deep conversation. And that's really different than the bullshit that, all these other companies are putting out, whether it's American Express or the Inks or the Forbes, right? They're putting out like the 10 things you need to do to make your business prosper, right? It's just really surfacey shit.
Written by journalists.
I just don't think it's very meaningful. And so when I tune into the podcast, and when I was not here, I appreciated the fact that you are having real conversations with real owners struggling and trying to achieve things. Like from a brand position, you carved out a very unique space. But I also think Paul is right in that you have an awareness challenge. You have a, marketing challenge of getting the word out there, getting people aware of it. You have a competition for time and eyeballs challenge because everybody's trying to go digital and podcast now because of the pandemic and other reasons. So they're different challenges. I think you have a brand. I think you have a position. You have a point of view. You have an experience people have when they use it. Those are all really great things.
Is 21 Hats a good name?
Well, you've used it for 2 years, so
Yeah, that's your brand at the moment. I mean, that's literally your brand. The brand is the thing you stick on the side of the cow, and then it's marked after that, right?
There's 21 things an entrepreneur needs to do, and that's what the show's about. We're talking about all the nuances.
Hats.
No, just 21 hats.
Yeah, I think that's I don't think that's the question for you to be asking, Lauren. I think you've worked on building a brand around that brand identity. So you have a brand identity, which is 21 Hats, and that has a visual presentation. You've invested in those for 2 years. So there's some equity in it. And then the question is how strong is that equity? Is there brand confusion with other companies? I mean, that's a deep, long-winded conversation. And I would just say probably it's fine. And you should just stick with it. Yeah.
All right. That's what I was looking for.
Would either of you say that my explanation of what I believe corporate culture is, that how far you go for a customer, what do you expect out of employees, and how you treat each other, does that fit? Paul, does that fit what
That's
you...
culture. Oh, it fits what I think culture is perfectly. I think that brand can be very different. And you can have a great culture and not have, like, what if you're in a business that doesn't engender warm and fuzzy feelings? Like, suppose you're running a tow truck or something that just picks up people who've just had a crash by the side of the road. Do you care about a brand? No, but you can have a kick-ass culture. You could have the most wonderful tow truck experience, but nobody's going to care whether you have a brand because they don't use that product or service in a way that gives a brand any value.
All right, you've just walked into my trap. You did exactly what I just said. You said no one cares about your brand. And I would argue if you just had your new BMW in an accident, you want a truck driver showing up that's not going to wreck your car worse than it's already wrecked. So I do believe some people are going to care about your brand when the tow truck shows up.
I just think what you're highlighting, Paul, which is really cool, is the idea of how much friction do you have in your organization. So in the tow truck example, I think it's a really good example because there are companies like that where they're either the activity they do, is like not exactly amazing, or it's perceived as like, let's say payday lenders is a good example of that, right? You can work really hard to make that internal culture rah-rah and exciting. But at the end of the day, when somebody goes to a party and says, I work for a payday lender, the person probably is going to wince and like go find somebody else to talk to. And that has an impact on the people working there. It's friction. You can overcome it. And just like the tow truck, right? And you say, yeah, I work at this tow truck company. People are like, oh, tow trucks, man. Like there's a public brand perception. So I think most business owners don't have that problem, hopefully. But if you don't have that problem, then why have artificial friction? And that's my point is like, let's say, Jay had a really great internal culture and treated his people really well. But yet, when somebody showed up in the store, like how about this retail experience? When you walk in at 10 minutes till close and the first thing somebody says to you is, hey, we close in 10 minutes. It's like, what?
And I can assure you that's one of my things that my employees would never, they
never do. Right. So that injection of friction, just makes more work for Jay and makes the customer experience worse, makes it more expensive to get customers, turnover higher. So I think the elimination of that friction between the internal brand and your employee experience and culture and your external presentation is often a really cool opportunity.
I do think that the brand out there we're doing a good job, but that doesn't mean that I think I'm doing the best possible thing with brand awareness, because I am always trying to figure out how can I'm on public radio, they give you 15 seconds and they're extremely restrictive what you can say. You can't use any accolades. You can't say rated best framer in Chicago. I'm constantly trying to figure out what can I say to get the message across that we really are better. And
that's because they're trying to maintain the fiction that they don't take advertising, even when they're taking advertising.
Yeah.
Let's stop here. We're just about out of time, and I want to run a few ideas past you that I've been reading about recently about companies addressing the labor shortage. But first, let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. I'm here with Rob Levin, co-founder of Work Better Now, which provides businesses with highly talented virtual assistants. Rob, I've noticed that owners tend to have certain questions about virtual assistants. For example, what exactly can they do?
Yeah, Lauren, we get this question all the time because people really know deep down that they need an assistant, but they're not exactly sure how it works and what they can do for them. I would say that our clients use our assistants in one of two ways. They will either use them, much like I've been using my assistant for the past 8 years, as an executive assistant, handling my calendar, which takes up so much time, email management, database, file management, personal tasks, creating documents for me. And then a lot of our clients basically operationalize our assistants. So we have assistants with titles like project manager, marketing associate, operations manager, and customer service representative.
I think some owners worry they'll spend more time managing their assistant than it would have taken them just to do the tasks themselves. How do you respond to that?
Right. This is a deadly trap, not only with assistants, but really with any employees, which is, I can do it faster myself. And the reality is you might be able to do it faster yourself. Of course, it's impossible to grow your business if you're doing everything yourself. I was very much of a similar mindset. And what I did with my assistant is I basically told him what needs to be done and had them document it. I hate documenting tasks, but I know the processes are so important. Now we have a manual full of my tasks. I only had to tell him once that he can follow time and time again. And if he's out, somebody else can follow. And also think about it this way. If you're a business owner making something like, let's say, $200,000 a year, which is about $100 an hour, you're basically paying somebody to do administrative work at $100 an hour if you're doing these tasks yourself.
That makes a lot of sense. What does it cost?
The cost is $1,900 a month. And as you know, Lauren, we are offering 21 Hats readers and listeners $150 off per month for 3 months just by mentioning the word Lauren. There are no contracts. Also very important for people to know.
Can you promise a return on that investment?
If you're not getting a return, something's not going right. All of our clients are not only getting a return with the first assistant they've hired, but many of our clients are now on their second, third, and fourth assistant.
Where can we learn more?
WorkBetterNow.com. And again, when you sign up for a 15-minute consult, just mention the word Lauren and we'll make sure to give that $150 off for each of the first 3 months.
Thanks, Rob. And we're back. So this labor shortage isn't going anywhere, and I keep reading interesting stories about companies trying different things. I want to run a few by you guys to see what you think. We recently highlighted in the morning report that some companies have decided that annual raises are not enough. They are going to review raises more often. Have any of you guys thought about doing that? Think it's a good idea?
I don't do an annual raise to start with.
What do you do?
I do an annual pay cut.
Now that's culture.
That's culture. Paul gets an annual raise. His employees get an annual pay cut. It's great.
No, I mean, first of all, I think that once a year sitting down and having some big scary conversation about pay hasn't worked for me. Tried it for a while. It's just not a good fit for where we are. And the second thing is that my ability to pay people is very closely tied to how the company is doing. And so I put a lot of effort into keeping everybody abreast of that constantly. And generally, I try to even get out ahead of anybody who needs better pay. But I've given people raises much more often, probably a 10-to-1 ratio to people who've asked for them. And that may be because the rest of the culture is pretty amenable, and we try very hard to make this a good place to work. There's 10 million surveys that say pay isn't the most important thing, and I tend to agree with that in my experience. As long as you're paying people sort of a baseline, can they support themselves? And I'm doing that for all of my employees.
All right, here's another one. We just published something in the morning report in the last couple of days. There are companies now that are offering 2 weeks of vacation to employees before they start. You sign up for the job, you set a start date, but you get paid for 2 weeks before your first day of work. Thoughts?
That's just a signing bonus,
Not
isn't
necessarily. If they're truly giving you your 2 weeks vacation, which means at the end of the first cycle of the year, you no longer have any vacation accrued, it really isn't a signing bonus. They just gave it to you up front. So that's a gray one. We don't know whether at the end of a year, are they getting another 2 weeks then, or does it go back to you have to earn it?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I wouldn't do that. But that sounds like it might be good in a situation where a company doesn't normally offer vacation. I mean, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about people who are trying to staff a burger stand, or are we talking about software engineers, or what are we talking about? So those are just different situations.
I think it's higher level. I think it's skilled employees at higher level salaries.
Honestly, I would never do that, because anybody who'd take that offer, I wouldn't want to hire them anyway.
Exactly. I mean, this just feels like A, a publicity stunt, and B, a continuation of like the transactional mindset that has got employers in this position in the first place. You know, I find it to be kind of insulting. It's like, well, we've treated you like crap for so many years, but now we're going to do something special for you. Like, people see through that shit. You know, it's
I fully agree.
Like they look on Glassdoor and they go like, what's it like to work there? And how, do the people care? And I don't know. It just seems like
it's a gimmick.
It's a gimmick. Yeah.
Another story that we highlighted recently talked about companies that are all but giving up on resumes and focusing on skills tests instead. And they're doing this for a number of reasons, including to try to improve diversity in their hiring. What do you guys think of that?
Well, I've been giving skills tests for years, for 20 years. But that doesn't mean I don't look at a resume. What it does is it gives someone whose resume may not be exactly to my liking an opportunity to show what they can do. And it's also a very useful double check on people whose resumes are quite impressive. Like, can you actually do 5 relatively simple things that you're going to need to do in this job? So it's all of those things that really gets to the hiring process. And a lot of small businesses don't have a hiring process. They just do it when they need to. And it's a scramble every single time.
I think it's just another gimmick, another ridiculous. Oh, don't worry about resume. Oh, and I'm not saying skills testing is bad. Do both. But to suggest that you should know where they've been for the last 10 years and how long they were there and what they did and who you can call for a reference, that's just ridiculous.
The other thing is just like, I ask people to send me a resume even for any job because I want to know whether they can respond to a very simple instruction. Like, you're looking for a job, you should probably have a resume. And there's some cases where I don't do that. For serious blue-collar work, if someone is highly recommended to me, I worked with this guy, he doesn't speak much English, but he's an awesome worker, great, I'll hire him. I don't need a resume from that guy. But for most people, it's just a question of, I'm asking you to do something, get me a resume, and then when you look at the resume, you can tell a lot about someone. Did they use a spell check? There's so many things that are relevant in just the act of handing a resume over to my particular work situation.
I've gotten resumes to say things like they live in Chicago, Michigan. like, oops, forgot to change the state date. I mean, people send resumes in like they didn't even, like they did it in the dark. So I think that's just another gimmick that got into the newspaper so that Lauren can read them and we can have some fun.
I think what Paul said has been my experience as well. It's really valuable to get a glimpse into how somebody operates in a real world environment. And I don't think an interview is a very good indicator of that always. It's art, people get sometimes nervous. They, fumble on questions, but they might be actually really good at a job.
And the opposite, they've gotten really good at interviewing because they're horrible employees. They're constantly getting fired. So they got lots of experience looking for jobs.
One aspect of this is to try to de-emphasize credentials that may not really be important when it comes to the job. I mean, for some jobs, do you really need a college degree? Maybe you don't. And that's part of the thinking here. Does that make sense to any of you?
Sure.
Totally.
The premise of the question is, I am an organization that can't be bothered to take a look at people as individuals. I have a process that I've set up you're going to do this, and we're going to take a superficial analysis of whatever kind of bullshit this process is, and we're going to pick a few out. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether they're great or good or mediocre. We need people. We harvest this pile of resumes. That's not the situation I'm in. So my process is about treating people as individuals. And if somebody has potential in any of the number of different things that I'm looking at, then I might overlook some of the other things. But all of these, some employers are doing this, are just like, they don't really fit a small business because a small business has the opportunity to treat people as individuals. And if you're running a small business and you shot somebody off the hiring list because they didn't go to Harvard, you're an idiot. You're going to fail and you're going to deserve it.
Amen. I have a really wonderful employer named Susie. She's going back to college. I hired her. I didn't know she didn't have a college degree. And she could not get a job to save her life. People passed her over because they're like, well, you don't have experience in this, or you don't have a degree in that. And I was like, I found her blog and I was like, oh my God, you are such a good writer. You've got a job tomorrow.
I got 50 of those people.
And it's like, today she is such an incredible team player. I can't imagine Kinesis without her. And I just think about like all those fools who like passed her over. And I'm just like, God bless them. To Paul's point, like that is our competitive opportunity as a small business, is we can work outside of that space.
Absolutely.
I would say that 4 of my best employees never completed high school and 1 never even entered high school. So, but they can do the job. And so that your opportunity as a small business boss is to find those people because, they're way undervalued in the market.
Diamonds in the rough.
So we've managed to end on a note of agreement. I do want to note that just kind of by the luck of the draw, we wound up with 3 guys in this conversation, 4 if you include me. And we also set a record for profanity by a wide measure. And I'm not sure what that's going to do to my brand, but my thanks to Sean Bussey, Paul Downs, and Jay Galtz. This has really been fun. Wait, don't leave yet. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like the 21 Hats owners to address, send it to me by replying to your morning report or by email at lauren@21hats.com. That's LOREN @21hats.com. Do it now before you forget. And don't be afraid to tell Jay what you really think. He can take it. And if you got something out of this conversation, help us reach more business owners. Tell a friend. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to the Morning Report at 21hats.com. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Okay, now you can leave. Thanks for listening, everyone.